Thank you. It turns out, I think the first question maybe is a continuation of what we were just talking about. It sounds as if one of the questions that was submitted, we have some questions that were submitted earlier, is to try to discuss the process that led to the LGBT situation. What were the positives and the negatives about the way the city council handled that? So we're going to ask for a volunteer to talk about that.
For the people who do not know what we are talking about, the City Council approved an ordinance on June 17 regarding the non-discrimination ordinance. It was giving the homosexuals more privileges, the LGBT. A lot of people don't know what the initials stand for. When we found out, we tried to tell them, don't bring it to the city. We don't need it. I told the council, I know about discrimination. And I don't think the law, the Constitution should be changed because people discriminate me. They could go and sue somebody. Our country is filled out with lawsuits against Christians who do not want to provide the service to the homosexuals. I went to somebody came and proposed that a petition should be done as a legal way to bring that ordinance to the ballot. The ballot was the only legal way for a resident to have a stand in that issue. We got volunteers. I prayed for 100. I gave 107 people gathering signatures. We got over 7,000 signatures where the people told their council, we don't need that. There is no discrimination against the LGBT in our city. Why you want to do that? That will open the doors to Christians being discriminated. We didn't want that. We were intimidated in front of the library, but the mayor and 2 council members, is a video on internet. I went home one day scared because they were coming with signs saying, don't sign the petition, reject bigotry. We were called bigots, we were called hatreds, we were called everything you wanted, and there is proof. A lawyer had the proof of all of this. Then we got the petition, we submitted. They knew that if that came to the ballot, they will lose, so they repealed it. The residents were not heard. Our voices were quiet. But thank God, the people took out their fear and signed the petition. Now, those reasons that the people don't understand why these people, I call people, please stand for your faith, for your values. Love them as God's creation, but I personally do not support the agenda when that agenda is going to be persecuting me. Because in this country, we should not be persecuted. Thank you.
I just want to say one thing. They heard the voice of the people quite loud with the number of petitions we've received in such a short time, and that was with God's help. We did the walk, and God did the rest. But what bothers me is, after they repealed that ordinance because they didn't want to face the people or put it on the ballot, they sent a resolution to the state saying that the city of Sterling Heights is behind this, that we support the ordinance adding lesbian, gay, transgender and to the Elliott Larson, which would make them preferential treatment over the rest of us. That means just because you choose to practice the way you want to practice, that would discriminate everybody else who opposes it. Why should that trump our religious liberties? But what I want to bring out more than this is the way they did this. They were working behind the scenes with the human rights, which is the lesbian gay arm. They were working with this and wording this ordinance. This couldn't have come any other way. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they were hiding it from the people. By law, they have to place it in the newspaper 2 weeks before they vote on it. That's the only way we found out. People were livid because they were passing something that was not necessary. There was no discrimination in the city of Sterling Heights. They didn't have one. It was special interests they were lobbying. They were not considered considering the voice of the people. They didn't want them to know about it. They were doing this behind our backs. That is the reason why we need a transparent council. The other reason is the way they were divisive. They called people names that didn't agree with them. We were called the underbelly of Sterling Heights. We were called bigots, discriminatories, because we spoke in love as to why this was necessary. It was logic, but they went on emotion and they went against us. It is only 1.6% of the nation that basically attributes themselves to be LGBT, and yet the rest of us have to bear that.
Okay, I think that's an important conversation that we just had. The conversation is about individual rights, individual representation. When you go into the booth to vote, you are represented for that moment when you fill out the ballot. When you leave, the question is, do we still have representation anymore? There's a really good article that some of us have seen, and the point is that once you vote, the person who you put up there as your representative forgets immediately and is immediately captured by the special interests that understand that career politicians, as soon as they are voted in, either they're open to be lobbied to or the lobbyists are all over them. So I think what you want to do, and this is a good example, is understand when there is an agenda, when there is a special interest, when there's people from outside of the city, when there's a global initiative, whether it's this initiative or refugee resettlement, you need to be very careful when the outside world is telling you what to do, and you want to elect people who will stand on their own and be accountable to you and could care less about their political future or how much money they may be richer by because they take a special interest position. I want to read something because I think it's public information and I think it touches a base here. And again, I'm not a resident of the city, so I don't know all the people, but this is from the letterhead of somebody named Michael C. Taylor. And at one point, the biggest threat to freedom and democracy is not Muslims or even radical extremist Muslims. The only thing that can destroy this country is the perpetuation of bigoted ideas based on ignorance and irrational hatred or fear. So if that's what you're dealing with, I think it's important to understand that that is a direct quote from Michael C. Taylor, and you should act accordingly.
Well, he's a politician, that sounds right.
Well, it doesn't sound right. It sounds terrible. But yes, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. No. Right. This is not I can tell from the people in the audience and the people on the podium that this is not a room of haters. And as people who follow the Judeo-Christian philosophy that our Constitution is based on, we're not haters. We just know the difference between right and wrong, and we don't want to be pushed around by globalists and people that are driven by agendas that we don't want to live under or have our children live under. Okay. I think there might be a question or two on spending and labor unions, and I have a feeling maybe there's a question about the fire department, and I don't know how else to pose the question, but if anybody wants to talk about that, we'll say that was a question.
Okay, I guess this has been my big issue from day one when City Council went through what they called the city summits, which were essentially a sell job to sell a foregone conclusion that they were going to have a 1.9 mil tax increase. And City Council started around November of the budget year selling the idea that essentially the world was going to come to an end if they didn't get another 1.9 mils. And at this point they had 10.8. They had a list of reasons why they wanted the 1.9 mils, and the reasons weren't very relevant, but one of them, they said, well, the stock market went down. You know, the stock market crashed from 12,000 down to 7,000, so we need a tax increase. And I guess now, due to the superior accomplishments of Sterling Heights City Council, the stock market went up to 18,000, and now it's hovering around 17,000. So this, I don't really think there is a connection between the Dow Jones Industrials and the city of Sterling Heights, but whatever it is, we should have a 3 mil tax cut if our tax rate's driven by the stock market, because stock market's back up again. We had an end to housing construction. Again, housing construction ended because the banks were bankrupt and nobody could get a loan. And the car industry was on its knees for the same reason. Well, the banks are back functioning again. The car industry is making cars. The builders are building houses, but the 1.9 mils is still there. That you can go down the list of why we had the tax increase, and every rationalization for raising the taxes has gone away, but the tax hasn't gone away. And we've sailed through, they referred to the tax increase as revenue replacement, where they're going to raise the tax to replace revenue they lost. But at this point, they've done more than backfill the budget, but essentially set record spending levels every year. And we can give back 1 mil, according to the arithmetic in the latest tax increase. A mil is worth about $4 million in revenue, and we give back a mil. That'll get us from 163 to 159, which if you forget the 163, the 159 will still be the highest spending rate we've ever had. We'll still be at the highest spending we've ever had. It just won't be quite as high. Plus, with new construction and skyrocketing property values, we probably give back a mil, and with the increasing tax break, still be at 161 million. We don't really need to keep the taxes this high because every reason to raise them has gone away. Thank you.
Our next question is about bridges. Apparently, there's consideration of building a new, looks like 970,000, 14-foot wide by 260-foot long vehicular bridge into the park. And so, as a question, if you want to comment on the pros and cons of that.
I am strongly opposed to this bridge. It's not necessary. And they're saying, well, you know, it's not the taxpayers' money. It's coming from grants. But, you know, when you have grant money, it's still your money. It's still our federal taxpayer dollars that we pay coming back to us in the community and for something that we don't need. We will be, the Sterling Heights taxpayers themselves from our millage will be paying a portion of this for this bridge, but still, it's still all of our money, and it's a waste. We have a beautiful, quaint, one-lane bridge, footbridge, that, okay, so we have to, that crosses the river going from Main Dodge Park into the trail system, and it's just a nice way, it's a gateway into basically almost to heaven on earth. I mean, places like this are needed in our world. We're 97% paved and developed in Sterling Heights. I think this bridge is a gateway to developing the park further. We have a Visions 2030 program, which is a grandiose spending binge that the council has proposed, and this bridge is just the gateway to that. They want to put zip lines in the park. Now, there's an area that used to be an amusement park on the north end of town, off of M53 near M59, and they're talking about buying that property. The city wants to buy a over $2 million price tag piece of property, and they want that developed into zip lines. Now, I've got to tell you this. Zip lines are a liability waiting to happen. People can be hurt, they can be killed, seriously hurt, injured, or killed on them, and their track record is not very good. But going back to where I started from, I kind of digressed. Waiting in line to take your turn to cross this bridge into the park is just a nice way to take a breath and get into a different frame of mind from we live in a bedroom community. We have a lot of traffic. Everything is fast-paced. And I know a lot of people back there that do not like the city's plans for the park. I think this bridge is just as a bridge to the Visions 2030 agenda of commercializing the park. It's going to, I don't see any reason to accommodate vehicles coming in. It's 14 feet wide. We could have different access points to the park from many different venues, because I'm in the park every day. And I talk to a lot of people back there. I don't think they want it. I don't think Sterling Heights needs this. I think Governor Snyder is in on this too, because there is a whole network of bicycle trails. And I'm a bicycle advocate. Believe me, I love biking. But I'm not going to send us into debt. I'm not going to spend us into oblivion over this. And it is part of the plan to have an interconnecting cool bike trail across the state of Michigan. I think that needs to be fixed. The roads need to be fixed first before we concentrate on bikes. They're great, but roads are what we're going to need to bring the groceries home. Thanks.
I think if you listen carefully, you heard the word grant in there, and you had the notion of a city that might reach out to the federal government to get something. And I think you want to be really, really careful. When the federal government does something for you and provides money, there's usually a string attached. And that string has to do with environmental things. It has to do with sustainability. It has to do with global agendas like Agenda 21. So be careful. There are candidates, there are government officials in the state of Michigan who love to see money come from outside the state. Unfortunately, when it comes from the federal government, it comes with strings, really, really serious strings. So I think there's a problem in Lansing at the top where they really, really like to make it sound like they're bringing lots of money. And if it comes from the federal government, you have to be careful. Along that, I guess we have another question about how do we feel about business in the parks? And I think, Verna, you're going to talk about that?
Well, I think the park should be left for our own enjoyment. So we can go there and, look at the water and look at the birds and the trees and just have a great time. I see no point in bringing businesses to the park. Would anyone like to add something?
Yeah, what's happening with the park is an agenda that's through the whole county, also going into Oakland a little bit. Hackle, who is our county commissioner, he basically is redoing all the bridges all along the Clinton River. And the plan is to have this whole entertainment, kayaking, canoeing throughout all of the cities. And this is a whole agenda to bring entertainment into all of that. And as well as all along the Clinton River, they are going to establish businesses all throughout there. So this is, you would think, good, but then it's bad. And the reason it's bad is because it's going to cost all of us money. As they bring stuff in, it's costing us tax dollars to basically implement all this. And again, it's coming through the federal government, some of this, but it's also going to be coming from all of us. And this is what's hidden underneath all these budget numbers. As a lot of us have looked at this budget, a lot of things are hidden under it that they're just going to push on through on these consent agendas. And it's all part of this whole 2030 plan coming in. But who funds all that? Us, the taxpayers. And that's why a lot of us are stepping up. We can see all this coming, and we're like, nobody's going to want this. But it's going to be slid through, and they're just going to get a tax increase after a tax increase is what's coming. And they're not going to say that right out, but as Doug Skinars and a lot of them that sit on city council, they feel the residents have big pockets and that we can just afford all this because they look at it as entertainment. They look at it as bringing new people into the city, but they're forgetting about all of us that presently live here in the city. Do we want this? And that should have been asked of us. Instead, it's hidden and it's being slid in through the county and through all the cities along the Clinton River here. And we're the one getting hit because we're going to be one of the main hubs here for this whole project, which is our park, Dodge Park.
This one, without going into the local detail that Jackie did, I just want to go on basically an overall constitutional level, that the city of Sterling Heights and every other city is organized to provide law and order and an environment where business can do business, but it's not the business of a city to compete in business. Sterling Heights is not Disneyland, it's not Walmart, we're not the Job Corps, and we're not the UN. That we have industry, we have commercial, we have business, and we have parks, which are a relief from all of that. And we don't need to be converting the parks into something that competes with business on a government subsidized basis.
And I'd just like to mention one more thing, and I'm looking at, from a business standpoint, you pay $20 to go to this farmer's market where you can bring fresh produce, vegetables, but the northern part of the city and all throughout Sterling Heights is full of fruit markets, And the owners of these businesses, they pay, high electric bills, they pay wages, they pay rent. They spend a lot of money to have people to come and shop in their businesses, and now the city now has taken a park and turned it into a commercial enterprise, and you have a few farmers would bring equipment, bring their produce and vegetables down into Sterling Heights, but the vast majority of that you could buy a coffee there, you could buy a lemonade, you could buy perfume there, you could buy lawn ornaments, you could buy a lot of things, but very, very little produce. So, I was looking at strictly that this is going to hurt the local business people that own the fruit market. So just on that, I was opposed to that, just for that reason. So thanks for that.
You might want to comment on another question here, which has to do with zoning, the process by which zoning changes are driven, whether they should be kept as they are or whether they should be loosened in terms of providing more leeway for developers.
Well, I've always been opposed to rezoning properties. I can speak on one which was right in my backyard, and that is a developer purchased some property on Mound Road, and it was zoned office professional, so you could put apartments in there, condominiums in there. You could put a business office in there, and this petitioner went to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and he got that property zoned from office professional to commercial. So it's like taking a car like a Ford and it automatically becomes a Rolls Royce. I mean, the property becomes so valuable when it becomes commercial. So now the owner now has commercial property, so now he wants to put a drive-through in there, right in a residential neighborhood. So he goes and he gets a variance to allow a drive-through to go in there. And then you have a public hearing, and all of the residents show up, and they all speak out against it. And of course, he got his way, and he got the drive-through, but then the recession hit, and he couldn't find a tenant to go in there. So after all of that, he came back again and wanted to have it rezoned again for commercial, to try and put another drive-through in. The six of the council people said, this is enough, develop it as it is, except for Mike Taylor. He voted against the residents, and he voted in favor of the developer. So anyhow, it failed 6-1, so all the residents were happy. And Mike Taylor said, well, he was all for, for supporting the business over the residents. So in almost all cases, it's really never to your advantage to upzone your property. My belief is you buy it as it is, develop it as is. That's it.
I guess I just have a comment. One of the things that we see happening is that cities now are being courted by organizations outside of the state to do something and to sign some agreement, to sign an agreement with a party that exists, a governmental agency outside of the state, outside of the country. So, for example, the UN, you can't get any more global than that, the UN has agendas, and they're actually signing agreements that bind cities to take action on sustainability, on other things. And so it seems to me, just as you make your decisions, you're going to want to make sure that you look at people who are really going to focus on the size of government, trying to keep government as small as possible, and who are not going to be courted by attention to go to New York or go to Washington for some kind of a ceremony where they commit the city to something which, in fact, they're not entitled to. It's against the Constitution for a city to make effectively a treaty with United Nations to follow some global initiative, for example, Agenda 21. So just another consideration when you look at the candidates. We have time for questions from the floor. I think we've got some people who are thoughtful people out there that must have a question or two.
Is there anything that's possibly going on with all these liberals that are up on the council becoming a sanctuary city, which means police and all this other stuff? Has anybody heard anything about it?
Well, we haven't heard anything on it yet, and there's only one more meeting for this to happen before we take over the government. So unless they do it 10 days from now, we should be home clear. But I think mostly the sanctuary cities are large cities that have overwhelming numbers of illegal aliens, to the point that the city government is either become afraid of the illegal aliens, or they're hoping to give them voter registrations and get them on their side. but hopefully Sterling Heights hasn't become the type of city that could become a sanctuary city. But with one more meeting till the election, anything's possible.
To relate that, to a great question, by the way, that relates to maybe not a sanctuary city, but there are cities that are entitled welcoming cities or welcoming communities. So if you learn more about refugee resettlement, you'll see that your tax dollars goes into Washington and the State Department issues grants to organizations who will make your city is already listed as a welcoming city. You are officially a welcoming city for refugees if you go to the New American Task Force, the Task Force on New Americans, which is President Obama's initiative last November. They're actively using federal dollars, your tax money, to put in the hands of activists who come into town and will make you feel guilty if you do not take refugees. They will bring in leftist ministers to come and talk. They'll bring in the professor from Oakland University or Macomb College, who is a leftist anyway, and talk about the need to move people around the world globally. So be aware, sanctuary city is for illegals, welcoming city is for legal immigration, but that means you are pinpointed. If you didn't know, 4,000 people came into Michigan. 1,210 of them were processed out of the Lutheran Services Organization in Troy. 650 of them were processed by the Catholic Bishop's Office in Clinton Township. Of those 40 cities, Sterling Heights was one. Sterling Heights received 234 refugees legally. Those people are now living in Sterling Heights. We don't know who they are or where they came from, but we do know that they're now on welfare in the state for the state as well as for. So be aware that a welcoming city has responsibilities, and to become a welcoming city, there was probably some grant money that went into the city. And if it went into the city, I don't know where else it might have gone, but there's money being passed around. It's your tax dollars for people to sign up as a welcoming city.
The Welcoming Michigan, Welcoming City, Sanctuary City is something that I have been speaking about. And because I'm an immigrant, I was told by the mayor that I should not be talking about it. How come that an immigrant is against this refugee program? I told him, what you need to do is come and learn. If you already know what it is, you should tell the people the truth. It is not what we think about helping them. They lobbied is saying that it's a humanitarian act, that they are bringing people to this country. How come this immigrant is against that? Well, I'm not against people coming to this country. What I don't like is what is going behind that program. We know that we don't know who is coming. I asked in a city council meeting, can you tell me who is coming, who is supporting, where the money is coming from? They will not say it, but he went to my Facebook page and insulted me there. No, I'm not against refugees coming here. I'm against that special program that the government is doing, using our money, and they are not screening the people that are coming. Why from all those 65,000 people that are coming, 90% are Muslims with men fighting age? That is concerning. That is what I asked the city council. Do we know if ISIS is coming among that group? Can somebody tell us? Yes, we should be concerned. It's a safety issue, and the city council should have spoken about it to the residents. Why is so quiet? I went to the Welcoming Michigan panel. It's all about helping everybody. I was there for a few hours, and I was amazed how they can to change the country. Because Obama or somebody said it, change America by changing the people. So what is coming? You all should be concerned. Thank you.
I get everything that everybody's saying, and I think there's a lot of money that's coming into the city of Sterling Heights. There's also a lot of money coming into the state. 50% of the state budget is federally funded. So, how do you rate our politicians? Do you rate them, do you give them an A for bringing in federal funds? I mean, because at some point in time, you've got to say to yourself, okay, here, do you bring in federal funds and you keep building and you keep adding on, or do you say, okay, here, this is the kind of city that we want? The fireworks. Federal money was provided for the fireworks. And then all of a sudden, the fireworks are eliminated. Why? Because supposedly there wasn't enough federal money given so that the firemen could actually get the training that they were supposed to get. Now, how this vacillation has just got to stop. So, you know, I'm just wondering, in city government, if you guys get in, how much money, federal money, are you going to bring into the city? And is that going to be your mandate?
Yeah, what we've looked at in the budget is what all of us have to do. We have to live within the budget that we have. We can't keep looking to federal government to support everything that we want to do in the city. We have to be accountable to what we're doing for the residents. So therefore, we have to ask the residents what we should be doing. That's not been happening. They've just been doing things. And no one really knows half the thing until after it's all the way done. Then it's too late. It's always been put on these agendas, and then all of a sudden you got this, you got that. That's how the farmers market happened. That's how this Welcoming Michigan happened. The mayor went to Washington and committed our city. He took those federal dollars. He didn't need to do that. We are just one of the cities that is, I mean, Clinton Township and us are the two cities that are taking all this federal money. But why are we, is the question that everybody's, why do we have to take this? We don't. They chose to do this. This is an agenda coming from Washington. We're like having Washington right now in Sterling Heights. That's what's happening. They've agreed to this, not asking the people. So no, we shouldn't be taking all this federal money, because then we're accountable to that. And we're accountable then to the federal government. We shouldn't be living, I mean, that's like each one of us being on welfare. That's not how you should live. You should live within your own budgets. You should be able to, so that everybody prospers, because any kind of money like that is someone else's money. So that's what I myself realized with the budget, that we can work out a good budget for our city and live within it and not be taking all this. It's a choice.
I think we're going to be wise before we take any federal money. We need to know what kind of strings are being attached to it. And we want to be able to control our own city and not have the federal government telling us what to do.
You remember when we received this, these federal taxes, these grants, a lot of times we have to match the grant itself. Like, I'll give you an example. On Van Dyke and Utica Road, right in the middle of recession, when they were laying police officers and firefighters off and cutting staffing and that, they bought an abandoned gas station, and they had to put they got a $200,000 grant, and they spent $200 and some $1,000. They matched that grant, and they bought an abandoned gas station. So now there's a park on Van Dyke and Utica Road. It doesn't serve any purpose. There's not even a bus stop there. They put parking benches. They've got lights there. They've got flowers there. So the city has to maintain it. So they spent, there's a $500,000 park. The same thing with this bridge. Well, they said, well, we need this bridge. Well, okay, $630,000 is grant money, and then we're going to cough up $350,000. We don't need the bridge, and I would like to put the $350,000 into roads. They say, well, we need that bridge so we can access the other side of the river. They access the other side of the river now. The fire station is a fire station on 19 Mile Road. So they just come down 19 Mile to Clinton River. You can go in at Riverland Park. You can go in at the baseball fields by Ford High School. You can go in at the DPW. There's 5 areas on the other side of the river where emergency service vehicles go right now. So we don't, so again, it's just, and the same thing with the 17 Mile Road Bridge. They got grant money to fix the bridge, and then we kicked in I don't know, $1 million to fix the bridge. So again, it's we don't need the money. If we had $163 million in taxable revenue, that's way too much right now. We can run the city. I know that I can run the city in a lot less than that. Thank you.
I just want to add, whenever there is any type of funding from the federal government, there are strings attached. Obviously, the funding for for us to become a welcoming city is that they will provide the funds for these people that are coming here. I'm not against immigrants. I am one. I've been here 50 years. But again, it's about the screening process. It's about a voice, having the city, the people know what is happening. That's what I'm talking about when I speak about transparency. We should know what the intent of our city council is. It's nice to know that these are funds are going to support these people, but there are going to be additional costs that are incurred by the city, such as schools and additional pupils in the schools and such. So I just want transparency. I want people to know what is happening and them to have a voice in it. That's all.
Well, this is a popular subject, and I guess in general on these grants, we always see a meeting where city council gets up and they've made a giant oversized check